Yes, up and down, right? It's called tategaki. You don't have to learn this now. Tategaki, tate means stand, taki means to write. So tategaki is standing up writing. Yokogaki, yoko is sideways. So you're writing sideways, yokogaki. We're going to do most of yokogaki in the beginning. Tategaki, as I said, it's something it'll come to you. You don't have to work hard. As you know more Japanese, it's not difficult. So I was telling you that kanji has meaning, character form, and sound. That makes it unique. It's got one extra element that makes it special compared to other scripts. That's why it's called an ideogram. Ideo meaning, can you guess? Idea. Yes, it contains an idea. Whereas hiragana, katakana, they don't really contain ideas. They're losing the idea component and becoming only sound characters. They're called phonogram. Phono, sound, right? Phone, that's where it comes from. Phone is sound. So before we actually start writing once, what I wanted to do was get everyone comfortable with the sounds of Japanese. Last week, we learned the 5 vowel sounds. I'd like everyone online to also unmute. So we can practice just the 5 vowels one more time, shall we?
Yes.
Great. The first one is everyone. Great.
E.
Hi. Second one is third one. Okay. This one's getting a little murky, right? You have to keep your lips a little flat. Yes, better. The fourth sound? Yes. A. Fantastic. Great. We'll take his lead. We can all follow all 5 sounds together. Fantastic. So now you have the core. What we need to learn are the consonant sounds. Now, as I was saying, for Indians, consonants will not be that difficult. We have most of them in our language, but there are a few exceptions, right? There are a few sounds here and there that are a little challenging for us. So I'm just going to highlight that. The exception sounds, the ones that break from pattern, and the ones that are a little unique. Yes? Okay. So you can take out your textbooks. Yes? This one, the big tall one, which says C1 textbook. And we have hiragana on page 2. Now, the very first group of sounds, consonant sounds, is going to be fairly easy. It's the ka sound. I think all of us are familiar. Those of you who are North Indian language speakers, you have, and even some South Indian languages, we have what's called aspiration. We put in that extra breath into the sound. Ka, ka, ga, ga, right? That ga or ka. That extra breath is not there at all in Japanese language. You have it only for a few sounds here and there. You don't have to overthink it. Basically, it's not there. So take it easy. Don't need to give that extra stress. It's just ka sound, not ka. Yes? So let's start with the first set. Ta. Ta.
Ta.
Ga. Ka, yes. So they do have a separate ga sound. G, ga. It is there. It's not in this list. I'll come to it later, but they do have that. So please be very clear about the difference between ka and ga. Yes, they are different sounds. So ka, ha, ki,
Ki,
ha,
Ki,
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 hu,
ku,
hu,
ku,
hu,
hai, he,
He,
and
ki,
Ko,
ko. Yes, ko. Yes, ko. Now again, they do have long vowel sounds, just like we have in our list. We we learn like that, right? That long sound is there. We'll learn it afterwards. It's very straightforward for us. So we'll focus on the main sound first. So ka, ki, ku, ke, ko.
Ka, Ki,
ki,
Ka,
ki,
Ki,
ko,
Ke, Ku, Ke,
Ko. Excellent.
ki,
Ka,
ki,
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 ka, ki, ku, ki, ku.
Excellent. Great.
ki, ku, ke, ko.
Hi. Great. Yes. Now the next row is where we see our first exception sound. Now the starting consonant is easy enough. It's the sa sound.
Sa,
But they don't have this C. If you were to think in English, it's like saying C, right? Yes, please have a seat. So if you have this sound, C, yes, it doesn't exist. In modern Japanese, it's not there. So instead of this C, she,
Shi, shi,
she, yes. So we'll start from the first sound. Sa,
sa, shi,
Sa, si,
shi,
su,
su,
se,
se, so,
se,
so,
sa,
so,
so. Right. Sa,
shi, sa, shi,
su,
Sa,
se,
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 so.
so,
Sa,
sa,
su, se,
shi,
so.
se, se, so,
so, yes. Remember, the
se, so.
hi. Just remember, the a, I, U, E, O, the core vowel sounds are staying the same throughout. That sa shouldn't become sa, say, sa, like it shouldn't change. Sa is always sa, the same a sound. Yes, be consistent.
Sa,
So we have sa, shi, su,
Sa,
se, so.
Su,
shi, su, se, so.
So.
Yes, great. Now we come to a slightly trickier group where there are two exception sounds. Right? First, think of it like this sound, T in English. Talk about T. Yes, doesn't exist in Japanese. No T and no tu either. Yes. There are accommodations for this in Japanese in katakana, but core Japanese sound, the natural sound, it doesn't exist. So instead of these sounds, you have two other sounds. We'll come to that. Before that, I want you to tell the difference in tongue position. Now, in Indian languages, we have a variety of ta sounds. We have the hard ta, we have ka, right? In English also, we have the, so many variations, right? Japanese ta, you want to take the tip of your tongue and press it against the back of your upper teeth. Yes, your upper teeth here. You want to push it against the back a little bit and say, ha, 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 ha. Right? It's neither, it's not this hard ta of Tamil or this really hard ta, which you use the tip of your tongue. No. You have to, it's a little soft. Yes? Ha.
Ha.
Great. Ha. Next, no T, you say chi. Chi.
Ha.
மாதிரி இருக்கும். நம்ம யோசிக்க வேண்டாம். Yes.
Ha. Chi.
Great.
Chi.
Yes. Tu. Tu.
Chi.
Tu.
Se. Se.
Great.
So,
So this is a tricky sound. I'm sure all of you have heard the word. 2004, it hit us in Chennai too.
tsunami.
Tsunami, right?
Sun,
Tsunami.
tsunami. Sun,
The
Su-
tsu, tsunami, no? Yes.
so,
Te,
ti, su,
Hey,
te, to.
hey.
te,
Tongue position is the same.
te,
Ta, chi,
Hey.
tsu, te, to.
ta,
Hey.
chi, tu, ti, to. Ta, chi, tu, ti, to. Chi, ta,
Oh.
chi,
Oh.
su, te, to.
Yes.
Ta,
To.
chi,
Chu,
su, te, to.
to.
Ta.
Ta,
Chi.
ta, chi, su,
Te.
to.
To.
Ta, chi, su, se, to.
Yes. Okay. Good. Great. Next group is an easy group. Yes. Na,
Na,
ni,
ni,
nu,
nu, ne, no.
Ne.
No, no.
No.
Ta, ni, nu, ne, no.
Only be careful about that oo sound everywhere. Yes,
Nani, nuni, no.
right? It's not nu, it's nu.
It is n.
Yes.
Nu.
Great.
Nani, nu.
Nu,
Nani, nu.
nu,
Ne.
nu, ne, na, nu, nu, na, ni, nu, ne, no.
No.
No, na, ni, no, nu, ne, no. Nu, ni, no.
Again, I'll just repeat this once. If you have your mother tongue, which is more comfortable to remember the sounds, write that down in your textbook. If that's better than English for you, it makes a lot of sense. Please do that. Yes. Now, the next group, most of it is straightforward. It's what you're seeing is, vis-a-vis kind of what you get. But that third sound alone, right? Sometimes you might hear it written like with an F. Yes. That's where I want to stop everyone. Yes. So, ha sound, our lips don't meet. Fa sound, it's called the fricative. The bottom lip will touch your teeth. Yes. In Japanese, it's between these two sounds. Okay. It's neither full contact nor fully apart. You're bringing it close and letting some air pass through. Yes. So let's just try the middle sound first. That's the tricky one. It's hu. Hu.
Hu.
Try not to make contact with your upper lip and hu.
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 So you may have heard of the name of a city.
Oka.
Hu, o, ka. Now you know all the Japanese sounds. How can you say it? Yes.
Hu. Hu. Ha. Ha. Hu. Hu. Ka.
Oka. Oka.
Hu. Hu. Ka.
Fukuoka. Yes.
Hu. Ka. Hu. Ka. Hu. Hu. Ka.
Oka.
Ka. Hu.
Is
Ka.
it okay?
Hu. Ka.
Oka.
Now, I'm stressing a lot on the pronunciation part. It's okay if it's a little bit off. We are foreigners, right? We're not Japanese. We cannot be perfect in our Japanese sounds. That being said, it's okay to make a few mistakes. But some of you may feel, I want to sound more correct, more accurate. So I want to share the correct thing up front. So as you go on, you can practice it as accurately as possible. Yes. So let's do the rest of the line. The rest is as it's written, you can say it. So, ha,
Ha.
Ha.
i,
Ha. I. Hu.
O.
Ho.
ho,
E. O.
Ha.
ho,
I. Hu. E. Ho.
Nani.
hu. Yes.
Ha. I. Hu. E. Ho.
Ho. Okay. Great. Next one is also pretty straightforward. It's like the na group, except it's ma, right? Just making contact with your lips. Ma,
Ma.
ni,
Ni.
Ni.
mu,
Nu.
Me.
Ne.
Mo.
Mo. Mami, mumemo.
Yes.
Mami.
Mu, me,
Mo.
Ma, mi, mu,
Ma,
me,
mi,
mo.
mu, me, mo.
Now in the next group, you will notice that two vowel cases are missing. They used to exist in Japanese, in old Japanese language. They got rid of it over time. Easier for us, right? Now we just have three sounds in this group.
Ya, you, yo.
Ya,
U.
Ya,
you,
you,
Ya,
you,
yo.
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 Ya, you,
Ya,
Yeah.
ya,
you,
you,
You.
you.
Yeah. You.
Ya, I, you, ye, yo.
there is no ye, there is no ye.
Ye. Yes.
It doesn't exist, okay? No ye, no ye.
Mm.
Just ya, yo.
ya, you, yo.
Great. Yes. Now the next tricky one. This will be the last main tricky one. Now the ra sound. Yes. Again, it's not the very hard ra that we have in our languages. So in Tamil, it's pretty hard. If you go to Malayalam, it's even harder. Ra. In Japanese, it's a very light flick of the tongue.
Ra.
Ra. Ra.
Ra,
Ra.
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 Ri.
Ri.
Ri,
Ru.
ru,
Ru.
Ru.
E.
Ru.
re, ru.
E. And
Ru. Ru.
ro. Excellent. Ra, ri, ru, de, ro. At this stage, I'll point out something. Again, some of you may know about this. In Japanese, there is no L sound, right? La. Doesn't exist. They don't actually have a native sound corresponding to modern L or La that we use in many languages. But they approximate when they, obviously, there are names all over the world that have L in them. They can't avoid saying that sound. So what they try to do is they use the next closest sound group, which is the Ra group. You might wonder, why Ra? How are Ra and La similar? They're actually extremely similar. Now, when you make a La sound, your tongue meets your upper palate and air flows around the tongue, right? La, it's flowing around. You can feel that. Instead of letting it stay in contact, the Japanese Ra, it's releasing, right? You're rolling your tongue a little bit, but the airflow is almost the same. It's just going on top also, but mainly by sideways. So that's why they use Ra group, right? It's actually the closest sound they have. So if you have a name that has La in it, they're going to replace the La sound with a Ra sound, whichever is correct, whichever is closest. It's something you can get used to. It takes a little bit of time. Like if you're Lalita, Darita. Yes. So that's just an example, just so you know before in hand, right? We're going to see a lot of this. Now the next group has even fewer sounds than Ya sound. Only 2 sounds. The first one is, sorry. Yes. Oh, sorry. Wa. Right? Wa. Wa. It's wa. You're using both.
Wo.
Yes. Wa. It's actually very gentle sound. Wa. The last sound, please note, it's not written as W-O, right? There are some Japanese who pronounce it with a light W sound, but it's more common. It's just going to sound like O.
Oh,
It's same as this O. The sound is almost the same actually. So you can make it the same, no problem. Yes, this and this are practically the same. Rarely a Japanese person might say wo, wo. But mostly it's almost O. So you can use standard dialect, it's okay. O is fine. Why are
And writing is
there-
different.
yes, thank you for asking. I'm just coming to that. Why do we write it differently? We use this for grammar. Yes? We use this character only for grammar, not for sound. I'll explain that when we learn it.
Okay.
For now, you can just learn the character. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wa,
O.
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 wa,
O. O.
Wa. O.
and the last consonant sound. This is the only consonant, as you can tell, that's allowed to stand on its own. Yes, all of the others need hand holding. This guy's a big boy. He can go on his own. That is mm.
Mm.
Wow, great. So this
Mm.
Mm.
very soft sound.
Mm.
Very soft, it's nasal. Okay, it's happening in the inside of your mouth. So it's not in. You're not using your tongue hard. It's gentle. Yes, yes, great. And often they'll end up closing their lips for this. So we can also practice that. I'll give you a word now. Those of you who like watching like anime or something may know this word.
Senpai. Senpai. Senpai.
Senior, right? Senpai. Senpai.
Senpai.
Senpai.
Senpai.
Senpai.
Senpai.
The in sound.
Yes. Se, ta, I.
Senpai.
It's not senpai. It's senpai.
Senpai.
Great. So that's the core sounds. There are a few more. As you can see, I did not talk about the pa sound. That's waiting for us. But enough with the sounds. Let's practice writing. Yes, now that we know the core sounds, we're going to practice writing. For this, I'd like everyone to take their Kana workbook. Let's get active. It's 11:45 in the morning. We'll use our bodies. This is the Kana workbook. Yes, the one with the blackboard image. Please take it out. And on the very first page, here you're going to see hiragana on one side, katakana on the other side. We're going to skip katakana for today. We're just going to do the hiragana. In class, I would like for you to use the first row with the dotted lines once, the first full row, and the second one without the dotted lines once. The remaining rows are for practice at home. If you do it all here, you won't practice at home. Yes, so you need to practice at home. Please use the first row and the third row today in class. The rest should be practice at home. Now, before we actually start writing Japanese, I'll let you take that in. It's a scary thing to think about starting. Like all writing systems, there is a preferred method. There is a preferred flow to the way they write. I'm sure many of you know what tool or instrument was used to write these scripts in the past.
Brush.
Brush, right? They didn't have pencils and pens. They used brush and ink. You have to be extremely careful. It's called calligraphy, right? Exactly. You have to be extremely careful. If you mess up a little bit, no erasing. Paper was not easy to come upon back then. You have to take a lot of care and make sure it comes out correctly every time. So you need to have some system that you follow. I'm here to tell you that that system is a very logical and straightforward system. Initially, it may feel a lot to learn. You're not going to memorize it in the beginning. You're going to let your body learn it. But just to tell you what that system is, there are 3 core types of strokes. The first is a stop type of stroke, where basically you're going to draw the line and you're coming to a hard stop. When you use a brush, it will look thick at the bottom where you do that because it's come to a stop. A hook will be exactly that. It'll have a hook-like shape at the end. And a swish, it'll flow, right? It won't come to a hard stop like this. It'll kind of thin out gradually. These are the 3 core types of strokes. We do also have a preferred stroke direction that we follow. If you see a horizontal, perfectly flat stroke, it always goes from left to right. Yes, always from left to right. Like this. If you see that, you're never going to write like this. This was never done. It's always going to go in this direction. If it's a vertical or slanting stroke, you're always going to go from top to bottom, because that's sensible. With a brush, moving towards your body has more control than away from your body. So they're going to go top to bottom anytime it's a vertical or slanting stroke. You don't have to write this down. I will share it with you, but, right? So here is semi-vertical, right? It's moving towards this way. This is a swish type stroke. You can see the thing slightly thinning towards the end, right? And the directions of strokes can change as you're writing one stroke, but it'll follow these patterns. So for this, you're going to go from left to right, top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom. It was one stroke, but it's following this general pattern. Now, it's all well and good when we have just one stroke. What do you do when a lot of strokes are coming together? Even then, when you have more than one stroke, there is a clear method or pattern. Right? If you have strokes stacked like this, move from the top to bottom. Same pattern. So in this is stroke 1, this is stroke 2. Yes, 1, 2. I have to go from left to right. 1, 2. In this case, same. You're going from left to right. 1, 2, 3. You don't have to write and practice all this now. These are kanji. We're not learning this yet. What I'm trying to show you now is when you're learning kana, you're going to learn a pattern. The same pattern will be followed with kanji. It's going to stay with you till the end of your Japanese learning, which doesn't exist. There's no end to learning a language. So it's going to stick with you. So let your body learn it. Don't go all over the place. Don't say stroke order doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter now with hiragana, katakana, maybe. You can try anything. But when you learn kanji with hundreds of little strokes coming together, it'll get very messy and you won't know where to start. And if you don't follow that order, that kanji won't look the way it's supposed to. It'll look a little disproportionate. Something will feel off about it. But if you follow pattern, it will be closer to what it's supposed to be like. Now, I'm just going to skim through these because these are all just for kanji. I'll revisit them later. But just to give you an idea, when you have like a big stroke in the middle and 2 small strokes on the side, there's a pattern for that too, right? This one comes first, and then you go from left to right. So 1, 2, 3. When you have intersecting strokes, you have a pattern for that too, right? Horizontal, then vertical. This. It's going to come again and again. We're going to keep seeing it. X-shaped strokes also have a pattern. You're going to do this one first. 1, 2. That's always pattern. And if you have a stroke that pierces some body of strokes, right? You got like a box and then you have something cutting through it, right? That piercing stroke must come at the end. You make the box and then you cut through it. You're going to see that. This is also another example of that. This is a piercing stroke. And in this last case, you have a piercing stroke in the middle, right? It's cutting through everything, but it's not jutting out, right? There's no protrusion here. Then it doesn't come at the end. It comes penultimate, second to last. Don't have to memorize. I'm just showing you that there is method to this. So I will share these with you. I think you must all already be enrolled in Google Classroom. I made a post earlier this week. So if you haven't yet, you must have gotten an invite. There's a way to join. So I'll get back to that later. I will share these kinds of materials in Google Classroom. So you have access to them anytime. You don't have to if you prefer taking notes, you can, but you don't have to worry about it. So with this in mind, let's write. Hi. What is it? What language are we learning?
Hiragana.
Hiragana? Yes, but what language are we learning?
Japanese.
Nihongo. Yes? Let's
Nihongo.
write Nihongo using hiragana. The very first one,
What is ours?
it's 3 strokes that have a sense of pattern, right? You have to do horizontal strokes first in general, left to right, left to right. I want you to just get a sense for proportion, right? Now, when you're learning each character, you're going to see that they come in a box, right? And that box is divided like this. It's a very consistent script. All of them are very consistent scripts. Every character is given the same amount of space. And the spacing between characters is also very even. It looks very pretty on a printed page. It's similar to our languages, actually. English is the one that's quite difficult, but this is very even. Get a sense for the proportion of the strokes in this box, right? Now, this is not a very long stroke. It's not going from one end to the other. It's just a small part of the center. You don't have to memorize it. Just get a feel for it when you're writing. So 1, and then top to bottom. This feels like a long stroke, right? You can feel the difference. It's slightly curving. In hiragana, you will seldom see completely straight strokes, completely even strokes, because the Japanese actually love odd things and asymmetrical things. This is something part of their aesthetics, but it's there even in their script. Yes, it won't be perfectly even. It won't be perfectly mirror image of something. So 1, 2, slightly curved, and the last one. It's like this loopy single stroke. You're moving in the same pattern. This is like top to bottom and then left to right. It's ending with a swish here. 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. What is the next sound?
E.
E. So please do practice writing a few times. I want you to practice every character as we do it. Just a few times in class. The rest is for homework. Next is E.
E.
1, 2. 2 strokes. We move from left to right. There are 2 of them. You do the left side one first, and then the right side one. But they are vertical strokes. So you're going from top to bottom. What is this? A hook. Yes. So 1, as you can see, it's not perfectly straight. Right? It's kind of slanted, kind of curved. That is the characteristic of hiragana. So 1, and the second stroke, moving down like this. The space between the strokes, again, pay a little bit of attention to this because there are some other strokes that will look similar and will cause you confusion. For example, this is ri. You can see why it's easy to confuse the two. They're both two strokes. They're both vertical. So the proportion, the length of the stroke is very important. Whereas in Ri, first stroke is short, second one is long. We'll come to that. This is E. Next is U. Yes, U. Two strokes. From the arrangement, you know you have to go top to bottom. Yes, top to bottom. First stroke. This is called a dot, by the way. It's very short. I know it doesn't look like a dot, but when they wrote dots with brushes, they got this thick. So today we call it a dot, but it's a little bit bigger than a dot. 1. You're moving from left to right and then downward. Yes? It looks like a 7, a little bit. This is, of course, there's one more stroke here. A, E, U. Next is?
A.
Yes. A. Looks like English Z, a little bit. Number 2, whichever works for you. Please note this little bump here. It's a characteristic feature of this hiragana. So if you miss this, it won't quite look like hiragana. So you want to try to capture that. Here is direction changing stroke, right? So 1, 2, 3. It's actually one stroke, but you're going to change direction. You're going from left to right, top to bottom, left to right. And here we have a, it's also like a dot, but it's with a hook, right? Ever so small hook. 1, 2. This is A. And the last vowel sound?
O.
Yes. What does it look a little bit like? Ah, yes, it looks a little bit like ah, but it's got this small stroke on the top right corner that makes it different from ah. You can remember it any way that helps. For me, what I used, I actually did use this. I'm not making that up. O looks a bit wider over here than ah does in the curvy part. This is kind of wider. So I like to think of it as more open. O sound. It's nothing really, it's nothing, no brainwave or anything. Just a way to remember. Yes. This is O. It's a different way of writing also. Now in A, you might remember 1, 2. This is a separate stroke, right? So it's not curving much. It's a separate stroke. Here it stays connected and goes right into the loop. Yes, top down into the loop. And that third stroke, please don't forget those little strokes. They're easy to miss. It's like dotting your I's and crossing your T's in English. You have to remember that. So A, I, U, E, O. Fantastic. I hope everyone's practicing writing these once or a few times in your workbook. Okay, so those are easy. Those are the ones you're going to remember easily because every time you practice, you'll start with A. Into the next group, you have Ka. Ka.
Ka.
I mean, in cursive, we kind of write our Ks like this, right? I use this to learn this. Hi. So you have, this is a technically kind of horizontal pattern, right? So horizontal first. 1. It's moving around. This also looks a bit like a 7. right? With a hook. 1, 2, 3. This is a longer stroke than what you saw in O. You can feel the proportion. So 1, 2, 3. This is ka. Remember, you want to be curvy with the hiragana script in general, right? Don't try to make it stiff like this. This is getting very close to katakana style. Next is
Ki.
we're breaching 4-stroke territory now. So this is 4 strokes, a little more than what we've done till now. There are 3 other characters that look a bit like this in hiragana script, right? This is one. This is another. And this is another. To me, it looks like this is facing one direction and this is facing another direction. But otherwise, the strokes are very similar. So you want to be very clear, come up with some story that helps you remember them. For example, this is ki, right? What we're learning, which sounds like English, ki. So I like to think of this as the portion where my thumb is going to hold it. And this is the ridge that goes into the keyhole. Yes, you have to have more ridges. So it's got 2 strokes. That's how a key is secure. Let's try looking at how to write it. Horizontal, horizontal, and then you have the piercing vertical stroke. Yes. 1, 2. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. In some printed texts of Japanese, you will see it like this. You will see it connected here. So technically in print, it's connected. Originally, it's supposed to be connected, but we're talking about writing with brush, right? When you're writing with brush, when you move that way, you lose control. So it looks more consistent if you release the stroke here and continue here when it comes back into control. That's why in written form, generally, this hiragana is disconnected here. So when you're writing hiragana, please leave it disconnected. It'll look more natural. Even when you're writing with pencil, it's actually quite hard to control curves that go in that direction. That's why the ones facing this side don't break, but the ones facing this way do, right? Because you lose control. So this is only for print. This is for handwriting. Ki. Next is?
Ku.
Okay, now you learned 4-stroke character. We're coming to a simple single-stroke character. Ku looks like a greater than symbol, right? Very wide. Otherwise, it's a very simple stroke. Ku. Yes. Ku. Now this is a hiragana which kind of has a left side and a right side. So which one should come first?
Left.
Yes.
Left.
Always left first. So top down with a hook. Now the hook also has some method to it. Why are the hooks there? Because when
Is
you're
the hook
writing,
important, ma'am?
yes?
Is the hook important?
Yes, it is a little important because it's part of the characteristic of that hiragana. If you remove the hook, it'll look a little less like itself. You can read it, but it won't quite have the same feeling, right? So you want to include it so that it feels more Japanese. Yes. Now, why do we have the hook? Again, it's because of brush. When you're taking the brush from this side and you're going to that side, right? It leaves a little trail. When you're disconnecting it from paper, it's leaving that trail. So that's why a lot of times hooks will be left when you're kind of changing direction. So 1. And then what order should we go in? Horizontal.
Then vertical.
Yes. It's all coming together. Fantastic. So 1, 2, 3. This is K. And lastly,
Ko.
Ko. What does Ko look a bit like? Yes. It happens many times. People confuse E and Ko because one looks like a rotated version of the other. So anything that helps you remember. For me, I related E with English I, like this. It's standing up, right? E with the English I. You can link it because otherwise you'll confuse these two very easily. So Ko, hook, stroke 2, top, bottom. 1, 2. Can we repeat this group once? Ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. Fantastic. Yes. What does the next group start with? The first sound is?
Sa.
And what does sa look like? Ki, right? One less stroke, right? Over here, where ki had 1, 2 strokes, it's just 1 here. Now in ki also, you can see that there's a small difference between the length of these 2 strokes. Mild difference would be there, very, very minor. Another thing is in ki, those 2 strokes would be distributed, whereas sa comes right in the middle of this, kind of like an X, right? The stroke pierces right through the center. Otherwise, it's the same pattern. Now, this is the advantage of learning pattern. When you see similar characters, even if you don't know them, you know how to write them. Right? This will be extremely handy once you start learning kanji. There's going to be kanji that you don't learn in class. Even if you learn Nihongo, N5, N4, N3, N2, N1, even if you learn all that, there's kanji outside of what is taught in class. There's kanji you will see for the first time in real life, at work, in some business document, in school, in your textbook, in some other subject. How do you write those kanji? How do you read those kanji? These methods will help you do that. Your body will know. So sa.
She.
Yes. She. She. There's no si.
She.
It's she. She. Looks a bit like an L, but curving, right? Top to bottom. She. Please do practice writing it a few times. It's fairly easy character. Su. Su. Now with su, you can feel this horizontal stroke is long compared to what you did for a and o and k and all that. Slightly long, right? Proportionally, it's long. Su, stroke 1, and the second stroke for this loop. It takes a bit of time to get that proportion right. What you're doing is, don't try to make a loop. It's very hard for me to do it wrong now. What you want to do is move sideways, right? To make the loop, move off to the left and bring it back to center and continue. This is the pattern. Please try to write this in the white blank space once to get a sense for this loop. 1, 2. I've seen all kinds of little hacks for this. I've seen people do things like this. So please don't do that. Su. Next is? Se. Se. As usual, we're going horizontal first. Now vertical, why do you think the right side vertical comes first? There's a method here too. It's slightly, ever so slightly taller, right? the topmost stroke always takes precedence. So this is starting on top. You want to do this stroke first and then finish with this. Also, generally, there will be a tendency to finish in the bottom right corner because it was a top-down script, right? So there's a tendency to finish somewhere around here. You'll be right in place for the next character. So say, look at the strokes once more. 1, 2, with a little hook. 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Again, the hook because you're moving up to start another stroke here. And lastly,
So.
oh, this is the stroke change example I gave earlier. The direction change, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually one stroke. You can feel the proportion. It looks a bit like English Z attached to an English C. But keep it together, right? You don't want to break your stroke. The proportion is short here, very long here. This is so. You could just write it once to practice. Ta, shi, su, se, so.
So.
The next group is
Ta.
4 strokes. You can remember it easily. It looks a bit like a T, right? And maybe you can think of this as the A. Ta. You're following pattern. 1, horizontal. 2, intersecting vertical. 3, top. 4, bottom. Ta.
Ta. No, you do.
Our next sound is one of the exception sounds, right? Yes?
Chi.
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 Chi. It looks like, oh, a 5, a number 5. That's a good way to remember. Yes. You can remember it like that if you want. There's also Ra. So please be very careful. This is Ra. I'll give you something for Ra when we come to it. So this is Chi. As I said, over here, it's connected, right? And it's facing the other direction. Those of you who want to think of it like, oh, Chi, solite thirumbudhu. Yes. I'm sorry, my jokes are so bad. I'm not a very funny person. So this is Chi. 1, 2. Next is also an exception sound. Su,
Su.
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 So.
One stroke. Yes, great.
Su.
One single stroke. I want you to get the proportion. This character is so important. I cannot stress enough how important this hiragana is. It's used so much in Japanese and not just for the sound. It has another important function. We'll learn about it next weekend. In reading Japanese, it plays a very important role. So you're going to write it very often and you're going to read it very often. So be very familiar with this. So it's going left to right, curving around and finishing here. Get a sense for where it's stopping. Right? It's easy to go overboard or be under where it doesn't quite look the same. This is tsu. Maybe you can think of it like a tsunami, like a wave that's rolling in. Hi. Yes, exactly. It looks like that. Some coincidence. So ta, chi, tsu, te.
Te.
Te looks like the bottom part of so. Right, the second half.
Yes.
Looks almost exactly like that. You're following the same pattern for writing it. It's one stroke. 1, 2. And hey, last sound of this group is ho.
To.
Ho. 1, 2. 2 strokes. Yes. Both of them fit into the vertical category. Top down, top down. 1, 2. Ho.
Okay.
Yes. We'll repeat this group once. Ta,
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 t,
Ta,
he,
Chi, Chu,
Chi,
To.
ho. Yes.
Te,
Great.
Ta, Chi, Chu, Je, To.
Fantastic. We'll take a small break here. Yes. From all this writing and character after character. I'll just share a couple of other culture things related while we just take a small break. Give our hands a break. Yes. So one of the important things about Japanese language and Japanese culture is respect. Yes. You may have heard about it. You may have experience with it. They are very respectful of the space. Yes.
And also it's a very disciplined country.
Yes.
And also it's
True.
a very calm country.
Very true. Disciplined,
And also calm.
calmness,
Hardworking.
hardworking,
Cleanliness is very,
Respectful.
yes.
very clean.
What else do we know?
Punctual.
Punctual, thank you. Absolutely true. They are punctual.
about India, ma'am.
I'd like to say yes. I'll tell you something really good about India at the end of all this. So polite, respectful,
Cultured.
cultured. Well, I mean, I'm not sure how modern Japan feels about this now. Yes. Now, one thing about India, which it breaks all of these things, but it has its one positive thing. We're very flexible people, I think. Yeah. We're not on time. Sometimes we can be rude. Sometimes we're not so hardworking. We're definitely not so disciplined. But that also means that we're flexible and
Adaptable.
we're adaptable. We handle adverse situations kind of naturally. Yes, that's us. So I think that's the flip side of our laid back personality in India, is that we're very good at dealing with adverse situations and we know how to handle our country. So anyway, so coming back to all this, what I wanted to talk about here primarily is, well, this two and these. So these three things. The other things are attached to this. Respect, we're going to start expressing it little by little as far as possible in class. In the beginning, we don't know a lot of vocabulary, so it's difficult. The first thing you can do to start is, you might have noticed we already do this around here. We add, yes, san at the end of people's names to show them respect. Yes, san is like Mr. or Miss. It has no gender or age tag. You can use it with anyone. You can use it with a child. You can use it with an old man. You can use it with anyone. It is a basic form of respect that you can give to just anyone. Now, in India, we use first names. We don't use last names much to talk to a person. Even if you're not close, we use first name, right? So here, when we meet people, we use first name plus san. But of course, if you go to Japan, you don't use someone's first name until you're really, really close with that person. Or they give you permission, or they're your age or much younger than you. So generally, by standard, try not to use first name without permission if you go to Japan or meet a Japanese person. You use their family name and add san. Okay? There are some very common family names. They're in your textbook. There's a Tanaka-san and a Suzuki-san who are in the textbook. Those are family names. not their first names. So that's one thing we're going to start doing right away. The other suffix, so this is called an honorific, shows respect and treats someone with honor, basically. There's another term we're using for all the teachers. What is that? Yes, yes. Now, how we're writing sensei, we'll cover next week. Don't worry about it. Sensei is teacher. It's actually used as a suffix for a lot of different professions. They use it for lawyers, doctors, teachers, many professions, but most frequently with teachers. The idea is that it's somebody who's has achieved something ahead of you and is in a position to teach you that, is in a respectful position, and so on and so forth. So generally, to your teachers, you can use this to show respect. That respect usually doesn't go away throughout their lives. No matter what you become in life, who was your sensei when you were a child stays your sensei till you die. So it's that much a show of respect. So these are the two core suffixes we'll be using. There are more. Those of you who like watching dramas or anime or something in Japanese may know about that. I'll talk about it later sometime. Another important way they show respect, and this is by doing, not doing rather than doing, that is the word you. They don't use this much in Japanese. You might hear it like in anime and things, they do use it. But actually that's because they use very casual language in anime very often. But to people who you don't know very well, to people that you want to show respect, pointing and saying you can be considered a rude thing, especially if they're older than you or in a higher social position than you. So definitely don't do it to your boss or anybody older than you in general. You can do it to people who are your age or younger. Still, you want to err on the side of safety, try not to use it. Yes. Instead of you, it's quite natural to just use that person's name to their face. I'm talking to Raja, I can say, Raja-san, and then ask him whatever I want to ask. But I won't say the word you, because it's like pointing. Like specifically, it's a little considered a bit rude. So these are just some general behavioral things. The other thing is punctuality. That we can also practice right away. Yes, many of you showed up to class 15 minutes ahead of time, which is great. On time is 10 minutes early. 15 minutes is great. Half an hour. I have seen Japanese people come here half an hour or 45 minutes before an event, just to be on time. Yes, they know about Indian traffic. There was this one group, they were coming from Torepakam or something. They started from 7 a.m. to be here for a 10 a.m. event. That's how much they care about punctuality. The Consul General, who recently he's retired, he had to be here for an event. He was 5 minutes late. He spoke for 5 minutes. All 5 minutes, he apologized for being 5 minutes late. He said, I have taken away 5 minutes from each person in this group. That becomes hundreds of minutes. He did some excellent math and told us how many minutes he wasted. That's how much they care. Yes, so punctuality, we'll start practicing here. So when you go to Japan, you'll be ready. So 10 minutes early, those of you who are joining us online, you can sign in and be ready on Zoom. Yes, I'm also chronically late. I was also that person, but this made me change. And I think it can work for all of us. And being early is a wonderful feeling. I'm telling you that. It's so nice to be there. You don't have to feel stressed out, if nothing else. So anyway, so let's come back. Just 2 things we can start out with, yes? All right, now coming back to the boring writing stuff. Now, I hope it's not boring. Is it interesting or boring? Now you feel pressured. You have to say it's interesting. Yes. So how far have we gotten? Yes, we finished. Tachi tsu to, right? Yes.
I don't have an extra pencil.
Do you want to? I don't have a pencil with me. Would you like to practice with a pen and a notebook or something? Yeah, I'm so sorry. I don't have one to offer you. If anybody has another pencil, Hi. And what can you say? In Japanese, what can you say?
Arigato.
Yes. Arigatou gozaimasu. Please do remember to return it. Before we just go, I'll give you one more useful expression. We haven't learned all the characters yet. This is?
Sumimasen.
Sumimasen. Sumimasen. Most useful word ever. It means excuse me. It means I'm sorry. And you can use it in so many places. When you want to call a waiter or a waitress at a restaurant, sumimasen. When you bump into somebody on the road, sumimasen. When you want to ask someone for the time, sumimasen. When you want to apologize for interrupting class, yes.
Sumimasen.
It is going to be your Swiss Army knife excuse in Japanese. Generally, when you're meeting a stranger, you want to ask them something. Can I borrow your umbrella? Something. Sumimasen. Yes. Now coming back to hiragana. The next one is na. Yes, na. Now here you're going to find this looks a bit similar to ta, but it's smaller. Right? Again, proportion. That's going to be following us around. So na, a bit smaller here. So 1, 2, intersect. 3, 4, you're moving downward. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Na.
Ni.
Ni. Next character is ni. We're going to go again. Left side first and then right side. The right side looks like what? Yes. Yes, please go ahead. You know where it is, right?
Ko.
Yes, same one. Yeah. It looks a bit like ko. Yes. But please do note there's a little bit of difference around here. In handwriting, it may not be noticeable, but you can just get a feel for it. So you don't misread ni when you read the text. Of course, you have this entire left portion. So ni. 1, 2, 3. Ni. Next is
Nu.
nu. Nu.
Nu.
That's actually just 2 strokes. This whole thing with the 2 loops, it's 1 stroke. Yes, you're intersecting with this one. Right, you write this stroke first, and then loop around, top to bottom, left to right. Yes.
Good.
This is another, just a small suggestion. You know how it's got a little loop over here, right? You can associate this oo sound with a little loop at the end. We're going to see it in a couple more places. So nu.
No.
O.
Again. Was there a question? Ah, okay, she was pronouncing. So na, ni, nu.
No.
This
Nu.
is ne.
Ne. No. Ne.
I know I told you about loop at the end and oo sound. This is the exception. You can remember nu and ne together. Okay? There are 2 more characters that look like this. So that is re, and this is wa. Re and wa also look similar, only this little bit at the end is different. So you want to create some association to remember it. I remember wa again, it's a very open sound, right? Ah, it's opening out. So it's the open one. It doesn't close, it just rounds on itself. Re moves outward. Ne makes a loop. So nu and ne in sequence have little loops at the end. Stories, little stories like this are very helpful in the beginning stage. You may not feel it now, but this week when you practice hiragana and you're trying to use flashcards, telling one apart from the other, it'll get difficult. I promise. So re, sorry, this is ne. And no. 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 It's not very difficult to learn no. You'll remember no very easily. So, na, ni, nu, ne, no. Next is
Ha.
ha. Yes, ha.
Ha.
Left and right, right? Left first, then right. Top to bottom, 1, 2. Ha. It looks a bit like which other character? This was? Sorry, it's poorly written. This he, right? So you can feel how this portion is different, right? It's kind of looping here.
And suits.
Next is
He.
he. Looks like an English U. It won't help you much. There's no similarity between those sounds. Just to write it maybe will be a little easier. These are very important. So although we link it with the English U, please don't leave it. These little strokes are very important. They're part of the characteristic of this. He. After he, the tricky sound. What is the sound?
E.
Who.
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 Keep your lips flat. Let the air flow between your teeth and your lower lip. Who.
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 Who is 4 strokes. It follows the pattern I mentioned earlier. When you have 2 little strokes coming on the side of a character, you do the center part first. Top, down, center first. Left, right.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. Oh, people are listening. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the kind of pattern we're following, like this, and then like this. This is first. This is second stroke. This is the third stroke, and I'm sorry, my math is going. 4th stroke. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Who.
Who.
Just 1 stroke. The next sound is
He.
hey.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey. One small thing that may help you feel better, the hey in katakana looks exactly like this. So it's one less character you have to learn later. Hiragana he, katakana he look pretty much the same. To me, I learned it, I don't know why, but I associate it with the hands of a clock. So shorthand, longhand. Not that that helps, but somehow it's just the image that comes to mind. Hey. So in Japanese, one of the expressions for surprise is hey. When you gain some information and you're like, wow, that's impressive. Hey. So somebody told you, I finished preparing for this presentation in 10 minutes. Hey. 10 minutes. That's the connection. Yes. Okay. Ha, he, hu, he. Ho.
Ho.
Ho and ha look very similar. Ho has an extra stroke here. Please be careful. So ha is the first in that line, 1 stroke here. Ho is the last, so 2 strokes. Maybe you can remember it like that. Yes. Otherwise, the pattern is exactly the same. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Ha, hi, hu, he, ho. Yes? This little gap, right? Good question. You can leave it. It's supposed to be there, but it's very hard to maintain that in handwriting over time. So it's okay if it makes a little bit of contact. What you make sure you shouldn't do is don't let it intersect. It should never cut through. If it makes a little contact, that's okay. Because when you start writing fast, it's very hard to control that. But it shouldn't cut through. Then it won't look like ho anymore. So ha, hi, hu, he, ho. Next is? Yes. Ma. The reason I said it shouldn't intersect in ho is for this precisely. Ma looks very similar to the right-hand side of ho. Just note that this is a longer stroke than this one. It's not the case in ho. Ho, they're kind of even. Here, the first one is longer. As usual, you're going to follow the pattern. Horizontal, horizontal, and then intersecting vertical stroke. Ma. After ma?
Me.
Ni.
Me.
2 strokes. You can take your pick with what this looks like. What do you feel it looks like? Yes. For me, it'll always be the number 4. I have heard some other, like maybe here. Ah? Hiragana ah? Tamara. Okay. I was like, hiragana. Okay. Yes, a little bit like Tamara. I don't see it honestly. But I don't write Tamara often enough. Maybe that's the fault. I've also heard people say this looks a bit like 2. Take your pick. Yeah. Me. It's changing direction like this and then cut. Me. Next is mu. Probably one of the harder hiragana to learn because of a very strange little loop over here. Now, this is a bean-shaped loop, okay? My bean won't look so great. But what I'm trying to point out is that it curves inwards here. Yes. So when you're making the loop, coming down, going to the side, curve inwards. Yes, you're not going to go circular. Curve inwards, and then you're getting this stroke. Don't finish it like this, right? In she, the stroke goes out like this. You have to bring it up. Yes. Move the stroke up. It's easy when you have the dotted guidelines. When the dots go, it gets harder. So 1, 2, 3. Mu. Next is me.
Me.
Yes, me. What does it look like?
Ne.
Yes.
Ka.
Nu. Ah, a little bit like ah too.
Ah.
But actually, it's nu without that loop at the end, right? This was nu.
Nu.
This is me. Yes, that's the only difference. Following the same pattern, which means you can confuse them easily. So try to come up with something that helps remember. When I started learning hiragana, I knew a little bit of Japanese. I knew some vocabulary. So one of the meanings is I. So I used to think of this as like the eye of a snake. Looks a bit like that. If it helps, you can do that. This is me. So ma, mi, mu, me.
Mo.
1, 2. This is one of the rare exceptions where you have this vertical stroke being written first and then the 2 horizontal strokes. I don't actually have an answer for this. I'm still looking, but anyway, that's how it's written. It could have to do with the length or this vertical stroke is a lot longer than most vertical strokes. This is mo. It's mo. Katakana mo will also look a little similar. This is just a bit more curvy. Just like mu, you're coming up over here. Yes. Bring the stroke up. So ma, mi, mu, me. We're almost at the end. Next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. For some inexplicable reason, I like writing this character. So 1, this stroke looks a lot like su. Yes, but the gap between this is a lot less here. Just want to feel that. And it doesn't come out as far either, right? In the bottom, kind of stops early. So you have the horizontal stroke, and then from top to bottom, right? 1, 2. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah. There are many 2 for the price of 1 hiragana, where when you learn the hiragana, you're kind of learning katakana also. We'll see it tomorrow. Yeah. Next is you. I will hazard telling you something embarrassing. This is how I used to draw fish when I was a child. Yes, others too? Okay, it's less embarrassing now. So it's very efficient. It's a single stroke. Yes. 1, 2. This is you, right? Again, you want to keep your lips flat, right? You, it's not you. You. And yo. Yo. Very important. Do not intersect here, right? It can touch. It shouldn't intersect. If you write like this, it will no longer look like yo. So 1, 2, 2 strokes. Now we're coming to Ra group, right? Ra, ri, ru, re, ro. This is Ra, which looks a bit like chi, sa, and ki. I said I'll give you something.
B apostrophe.
Yes?
B.
B? Oh, it looks like a B, English B. Yeah, actually a little bit. Small b, yeah, a little bit. Nice. So I may be a little older than some of you here, but I'll hazard embarrassing myself again. How many have heard of this anime called Cardcaptor Sakura? Yes? No? Oh, I feel so alone. Okay. Yes, okay, there's somebody in the back.
Yes.
Okay. Now, that's not important. I'll come to that later. But you have all heard of Sakura, at least I hope? Yes?
Sakura means
Sakura flower.
Yes. Sakura means? Exactly.
Cherry
The
blossom.
type of flower that blooms on the cherry tree. It's called the cherry blossom. Sakura is the Japanese word for it. It's a very important symbol in Japanese culture also. Does anyone know why it's so special? Yes. It blooms only once a year and?
It's a seasonal time.
During the New Year.
Exactly. During spring, right? During springtime is the only time sakuras bloom. And more importantly, the period in which they bloom is very short. Right? I've heard the longest, I think, is like 3 weeks or something, but sometimes they scatter in as short as 2 or 3 days. So for the Japanese, the sakura tree represents the impermanence of life, right? But even in that short period of time that sakura are alive, they're so beautiful, right? They give so much beauty to their surroundings. So it's like you're living your life to your fullest, even though it's so short. So that is, it for them represents life, how we should go about living our lives. So it is one of the important cultural symbols of the Japanese. Now, coming back to the reason I brought this up was, so in this anime or manga, Cardcaptor Sakura, if you look this up online, you will find the manga, right? Manga is comics, right? They're the comic version of anime often. So in the manga form, the way her name is written on the cover, it's written in hiragana because it was meant for children. It's not in kanji, it's in hiragana, Sakura. In the ra part, right, instead of this little stroke, there's a tiny cherry blossom flower. Just the petal, not even the whole flower, just the petal. And I don't know why this image has stuck with me through the years. And I like to share it with every batch. So you can look for little aesthetic things like this that are strewn all over Japanese culture, right? Little things. They use the same images. It was such a beautiful thing when I realized it. But it helps me remember this ra distinctly from the other 3 characters because the petal is separate from the tree here, right? It's falling off, it's scattering. So anyway, that's for you to remember ra. And for me to feel a little old. It's a 90s anime, it's not that old. Okay, next is
Ri.
Ri. Ri is similar to? Yes, E. Fantastic. Yes. Now you can feel the difference, right? It's much closer together. It's a bit straight. And the first stroke is tall. It's starting higher, but it's significantly shorter. The second stroke is very long. In printed forms, you might see it like this. It may look connected in printed text, but in handwriting, it's always written like this, with a hook. This is Ri. Again, since it has an E sound in it, you can associate it with E, but have them separate in your mind. Next is? Ru. Yes, Ru. You got that oo sound with a little loop? It looks like what number? 3, right? You can remember ra, ri, ru. The third sound. Yes?
Ma'am, it looks like 3, but the only thing is that there's some curvy thing.
Yes, the curvy thing in the bottom, right?
Ma'am.
There is one character that doesn't have that. We're just going to see it. But well spotted. Please remember the curvy thing for ru. Yes? Ra, ri, ru. Easy one. Next is re, which looks like wa and ne or nu.
Ne.
Yes, it looks like ne. Right? Nu is this one. So it looks like ne. This is re. What they have in common is they are both A sound. Yes, you can connect them, but remember them distinctly. Re is moving outwards. You have this re sound like are. You say very often, it's in Indianism, right? Are. It's like an open sound. I always feel like you're dragging it out. Are. Yes, you're dragging it outwards. Re. The stroke pattern is otherwise the same. And lastly,
Ro.
ro.
So exactly 3.
Yes. It's like ru, exactly. It's like ru without the loop. It's open at the end, o, right? Open. All these little stories you can use. Please use them. Whatever it takes. Ro. So ra, ri, ru, re.
Ro.
So as this is just a pictorial depiction of the difference that's happening with ra and la. Basically in ra, you just have that extra contact, your tongue touching your upper palate. In la, here that contact will be released. Here the contact is staying, so air has to move around your tongue. Here, when you make that little flick, air will pass through the top and the sides. This is actually an American ra that's depicted here. Ra. There's a little gap actually, but it's not very important. Just to show you that they're very similar sounds. This is in Japanese, you're making this a little bit of a roll. Ra, ra. You're getting that rough sound there. Now we have just a few more sounds, right? The few oddballs left. This is wa.
Wa.
Wow.
Wa. You're going to use wa very often. You don't want to overstress the w part. It's a little subtle in Japanese. Wa. Right? Wa. That's enough. You don't want to use your lips too much. Wa. And how are we supposed to pronounce this one? Yes. Just O. Right? We're going to use it for grammar. Only for grammar. We'll never use this in spelling words, right? In writing the names of things, we won't be using this. Now, how to write this character? It looks complicated, but if we follow our simple steps, horizontal, top to bottom, it looks like an H. And this looks like C. It's also the same way we write the stroke in to. This is the same stroke. This is O. And finally, Now, it looks a bit like N, so I think everybody learns this one very easily. Or H, okay, that's true, because it's very tall, right? But do be careful, when you associate with other characters in other alphabets, in other languages, you tend to write it more like that. But you want to remember it in Japanese, right? It's a very slanted character. This is very sharp, and this is also quite high. It almost looks like a W, almost, right? And one small note about it has all of these sounds depending on how you use it. So in hand, right? Before you make a d sound, your becomes very nasal. The same thing happens with right? Before a g sound, it becomes very nasal. Not necessary that you have the g or da, but in Japanese, generally, it's a very nasal sound. It also has an sound before b sound or p sound. Like in senpai, right? Senpai. Becomes a ma sound, actually. The point is that it's a very inside nasal kind of sound. So, all of these are contained. In Tamil, these are all separate, right? But here it's all the same. Because anyway, your body will make that sound. There's no other way to pronounce this. It's going to automate to this form. So why keep a different character? I guess maybe that was the thinking. I don't know. Now, lastly, we're just this is just a few minutes. I mentioned that there are some other characters. What we've learned now are the core sounds, right? But in addition to the core sounds, if you look at your textbook, there are a bunch of others. But nothing to fear. There are no new characters here. Yes? If you look at the set below, this set, what character group is this? It's the ka group with a slight modification. What group is this? Sa group with a slight modification. This is? And these two are?
Ah.
Yes? Actually, it's the same exact characters, but what you're doing is you're adding this little double stroke. It's a small three dots. It has a name. It's called a dakuten. You don't need to know that now. But what it means is that you are voicing that sound. And what is voicing? Voicing in linguistics is basically when you add your throat to that sound. You take ka and add a throaty sound. Ga. It
Ga.
becomes muddy, right? That's all you're doing. That's what these two little strokes mean. So, ga, gi, gu, ge.
Go.
Yes, you can repeat it one more time. Ga,
Ga. Gi.
gu.
Gu. Ge. Go.
Go.
Now, in the coming groups, we're going to see some exceptions, just pointing them out. In the next group, you don't have, just like you don't have C, you don't have Z either in Japanese. Instead, we have G.
G.
G, right? So this group is actually the group except for this sound. So sa becomes za,
Z. Zu.
ze,
Zo.
Zo.
yes, za,
Za. Zi. Zu.
Zu. Ze.
Zo.
G, right? It's like the G that we use here. Eppadi irkeenga G? Yes, nothing different, nothing special. Yes? Haan ji, na ji, same G. Next, ha becomes da. Da,
G.
si,
Du.
de.
Du. Do.
It illustrates they don't have D sound or do sound. No D or do. Again, it's the same G. So you wonder, which one do I use where? There's no difference. The spelling of a word comes built in with one of these characters. You just memorize it when you learn a word, like in English, right? You just learn the spelling. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but we just learn it. It's like that. You just learn it with the spelling. Similarly, here too. These are two basically the same sounds. You learn it with the spelling of a word. There are some dialects in Japanese where these are distinct and different sounds. But in the main Tokyo dialect, it's not all that different. For foreigners, it's not very important to learn the distinction. If anything, this is sometimes pronounced as z,
Zu.
z, z versus z.
Zu.
It's like that minor a difference. When you're speaking very fast, it's not noticeable. Now, the next two groups are a bit special. One is ha becoming bilabial. You're using both your lips. Ba, bi, bu, be, bo. Yes, very simple. In the next case, the symbol is a little different, right? Here it was two little dots or strokes. Here it's a little circle, right? You can think of it as, actually it's a voiceless sound. All of these are voiced. The first four rows are voiced. You can feel your throat. If you keep your hand, you can feel the vibration. But if you make pa sound, you won't feel much vibration because it doesn't have voicing. Ha, pi, ku, he,
Ho.
ho. Fantastic. Pa, pi,
Ha. Pi. Hu.
he,
He. Ho.
yes. The reason we're using the H group is essentially it's the same sound, but you're using both your lips.
Mhm.
If you voice, it becomes ba. If you don't voice, it becomes pa. That's why we're using the H group. So when you write, you have to consciously remember which consonant group turns into which voiced group. Which voiceless consonant becomes which one. Other than that, the characters are the same. You have practice in your workbook for each of these characters also. Please do practice. Many times I see students leave out these two little strokes. They want to write ga, they end up writing ka. It makes it a totally different word. So this is very important. Yes, they're two completely different sounds in Japanese. So we want to be very careful. Like in Tamil, we don't draw that distinction. The same ka we use for ga also. speakers of the language know which one is used where. For them, they are different. So there are small differences like this too. Now, we're out of time, so I think I'll pick this up tomorrow. But just a sneak preview. These are called contracted sounds. Yes? What you do is you take consonant, you take the E sound character of each consonant group, and there's also the voiced groups here. And you're adding a small ya, you, or yo, small size, right? The E character is big, the ya, you, and yo are small. And you're putting them together to create one character. This is not two different sounds, it's one sound. That's why it's called contracted. What you're doing is, this is ya, you, and yo, right? And you're attaching it to any E sound. Any E sound. You contract it. You remove the E part and you attach this. So it becomes kya, kyu, kyo. It's one sound, right? It's not kiya. Kiya is different in Japanese. Kya is different in Japanese. We'll go into this more tomorrow, but I just thought I'll give you a preview so you can practice writing and get the feel at home. Yes. So there are all of these. These are the contracted sounds. Some of them are a little difficult to pronounce, but they're mostly following the same format. Yes. So for today, we will close with this. I don't want to shoot too far over time. Any questions before we wrap up? Yes.
Ma'am,
One
are we supposed to use you to Japanese people for respect, or we're supposed to use san?
Better to use san. Avoid you in general. We don't use the word you. You can show disrespect. So you don't want to use that. The word for you is anata. Try not to use it though. Yes. Yes. Huh? அவ்வளோ சின்னதாவும் இருந்திருக்காது. But you use the fine tip end of the brush. You'll be able to get a little control. They won't write it really tiny. In printed fonts, we make text really small. But when they were writing Japanese with brush, it was fairly big. Any other questions online? Any questions?
When to use kun, as you told san to respect.
Yes, so you're asking kun.
Yeah, K-U-N.
Yes, kun can be used only on boys in general. You can use it on women only if you're much older than the woman. Generally, it's considered masculine though, so only on men. And it is used for men who are your same level or lower level than you in whatever structure you are in. Like in school, if they're same age as you or same class, you can use. If they're younger than you, you can use it. You will never use kun to somebody who's older than you, who is in a higher position than you at your workspace. And if you don't know them well, you don't generally use kun. Also, boys sometimes don't like being called with kun. It's good to check with them first. They feel like they're being treated as children. So san is better, safer side.
Arigato.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. It does get a little thicker. It's okay. So small variations like that, they don't matter in handwriting. And as Bala-san mentioned last week, as I also mentioned, we're moving into an era where handwriting is becoming obsolete. So you don't have to overthink the writing part. It's for you to get a feel of what the character looks like. But over time, mostly you're going to be typing. So you may be expected to write here and there, handwrite things. Next, for example, I remember with a lot of Bala-san's application stuff, he had to handwrite his little paragraphs of why he wants to go to Japan, what he's studying and all that. Sometimes you will have to. So for that, it's good, but they're not going to be too bothered about those minor variations. Any other questions? So we learned one more expression for today. That is, see you again tomorrow. Anyone know what it is? Yes. Mata ashita. Yes.
Mata Ashita.
Ta Ashita.
Mata ashita. Yes.
Ta
I'm looking forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Hai. Arigatou gozaimashita.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Matashita.
Hai. Arigatou gozaimasu. Mata ashita. Yes, you can stand up if you're in person. This is Japanese custom, right? It is called, yes, showing respect. Boys will usually keep their hands flat on their sides. Women should fold them across like this in front. And we bow. You can go 45 degrees if you want to be really respectful, 90 degrees. And then you can say, arigatou gozaimasu. Yes? Hai. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Mata ashita.
Mata ashita.
Hai. Mata ashita.
Mata.
Ah, yes.
Paula Sense contact.
You can check with the admin team downstairs. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hai. Arigatou gozaimasu.